Hey guys, welcome back to Love Love Lock, and it's your girl Nyla Lovelock, but I'm here with a special guest, Mallory Adele. Mallory, introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Mallory Butts. I'm a junior dual degree chemistry and chemical engineering major at Spelman College.
Okay, Mallory owns, what would you call it? It's not necessarily a brand, but she started this thing called The Optimist, which I thought was beautiful, not even in terms of the title and the visuals, but just in terms of the concept. Do you want to explain more about that?
Sure. I would define the Optimist as more so an idea or sort of like an archive for ideas. In a sense, it is about like product as far as like design because I think that's one of like my artistic outlets, but it's also bigger than that. And I'm less focused about selling a product or like making some sort of profit as more I'm focused on like putting out ideas that like have purposes that are bigger than myself and also can be like relatable to other people and just are like bigger than just like for me, but also just can connect with other people and tell stories that are important. So
Yeah, and I could tell even when you just dropped two sweaters like what a
mm-hmm.
couple months ago, and I was like, it doesn't look like you're trying to do this on terms like of monetary value, just something that form of expression.
Mm-hmm.
But what was the purpose behind the last? What do you call them, seasons? Because are they going to change relatively throughout the year?
Um, I don't know if I plan on being as consistent with it quite yet. It's more so like when it kind of comes, it comes.
Right.
I do plan on having some level of consistency, but I guess I just haven't decided yet if it's seasonal or what that looks like. And it's also not like gonna be just sweaters, because like I've been working like other designs. I think it's all about timing and when it sort of feels right. And so I think in order to do that, it has to exist outside of like being consistent with a seasonal schedule for me.
And how do you formulate your ideas? Like, what? How does that come to you? Or do you just sit
Mm-hmm.
down and like comes into your head, or are you inspired by something specific?
I use a personal design language. So, in other words, like sort of like a outline or sort of like format
Mm-hmm.
for why I design. And so it's like a sort of like a philosophical idea I took from Virgil Abloh, who I'm a really big fan of, and I guess you could say I'm inspired by. But yes, so essentially, like I'll give you an example of one. Um, like the idea that everything is art. Like I kind of like try to look at the world like everything is art, and although maybe the way it's interpretive is subjective, I'm trying to like strive to see the artistic value in everything, and I think that helps to like sort of expand my mind and be able to create and just like sort of move forward in my creation and not be like stuck to one way of creating.
I like that. And then I also realized that a lot of your work tends to be like centered around your family, or you
Mm-hmm.
just embrace the art within your family, which I think is so important, especially for people who are family oriented, to show that not every black family is also necessarily dysfunctional,
Mm-hmm.
and there's also beauty within. But speaking of Virgil Abloh, I know that you recently got a scholarship for what is it was a Fashion X Virgil Abloh scholarship. So
Mm-hmm.
what did they have you do? How did that help you in your creativity now?
So the first time I was awarded was actually last year. I had applied the summer before sophomore year, and then someone reached out from their team. So Virgil's scholarship, Postmodern, is like, I guess, like a child scholarship and a larger parent overhead scholarship called the Fashion Scholarship Fund.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have like a whole bunch of other fashion related scholarships under that umbrella. So they reached out to me after I applied because I guess they saw I went to Spelman and they wanted to do like an information session at Spelman so that other black students and HBCU students in particular know the opportunities that Virgil Scholarship provides.
And
And
it's there.
so, yes, and so I hosted that first conversation and then was awarded that December and then hosted the next information session last fall and then was awarded again this December. And so with Postmodern, last year they do like a summer series. So there's like various speakers that will come and you get an opportunity to learn from them. So like for example, Gabrielle Hurst, like just like big people in the industry who can provide a lot of insight to different sectors of fashion and what their journeys have looked like. There's also the Fashion Scholarship Fund Gala, and so this is for every scholar. So basically, they post like your case study, like a slide from your case study up like on physical walls in the gala, and people will come around and like.
What was your case study?
So you can choose like what type of case study. There's different disciplines. I think it's like four. I chose design, but like I think there's like marketing, merchandising, etc. But my first case study, they give you a prompt. And so the prompt was like, pretend you're like a creative director for a company and sort of like use that as an opportunity to introduce a new collection. And so I chose Off-White the first year. And then last year it was focused on sustainability. And so building a collection in a sustainable practice. And so I chose Jacques Mousse for that one. Yeah.
I like that. For someone who is so indulged with fashion, you're not. You would think that you're a design major or something in the arts, but you're not. You're a chemical engineering major. So how do you plan on using that in the real world and like long-term goals?
The two are the same for me. I'm majoring in chemistry and chemical engineering because of my interest in cosmetic design or cosmetic formulation. And then as far as my interest in fashion, it's about like fashion formulation or fashion design. And so I use a lot of the same, how I mentioned personal design language, I kind of approach the two the same in terms of looking at like, how can this exist for a purpose that's bigger than me? Who could it be serving?
Yeah.
What story can be told? Like, what's the purpose for it? And so I use the same sort of logic or like philosophical thought when approaching both. And so I see a lot of intersection in the two, and I don't really think they're that separate. So
yeah, honestly, I think that if you're a true creative or using your creativity to make a mark in this world or an impact, and I honestly think that Spelman women have that a lot. Like, I'm a political science major, but I have hopes to like own my own production company, and I think that duality of Spelman women specifically probably should be more discussed to know that there's more avenues. And I know that you also are part of something called Providence Minds, and I was scrolling and it said that one of your quotes was never limit yourself. So how do you feel, what would be advice you would give to somebody who has two avenues of life that don't necessarily correlate but are trying to find the mix between them both?
I feel like when it's something that's able to be both personal to you but also relatable to other people, then there's always an intersection. And I think having a personal design language has been very helpful for me in terms of understanding why my interests are what they are, and why they're important. And so I think the first step I would suggest is just like taking the time maybe to think about like, why is it important, number one, for you? And then maybe from there you can figure out why it's important in general. And then from that point kind of see a crossover. But I kind of think there's a crossover in anything. Like, there's always a bridge, and I kind of
Or
feel
you
like
make
as
the
well.
bridge, you know
Or
what I'm
that,
saying?
yeah. But at the same time, I think you yourself can be the bridge, because I don't know, not to say like no one's ever thought of it, but in a lot of conversations I've had about like, why are you a STEM major but also want to pursue fashion?
Yes,
like, I've gotten
exactly,
that question.
yeah.
You might originally be like, it's different, but like I kind of have centered myself as the reason why they're not so different, if that makes sense. So kind of like maybe the advice is to be the intersection yourself.
Be the intersection, be the bridge.
Yeah.
No, I definitely love that, because I think that at Spelman sometimes we feel discouraged, but I also believe that it's a mentality that you have to put it up to your mind to know that, have trust in yourself that you can accomplish both. And
Right.
I'm glad that I'm starting to see that more often in people stepping into their creative avenues. But what's the purpose for you? Like, I know that's a question you told everybody to ask themselves, so how do you answer it?
I think it's actually kind of layered and a little bit complex. Like, I think I have multiple purposes.
For sure.
Like how you mentioned family. Family is really big for me. And I think family is also like conceptually there as far as a reason, especially because on one part, like, I feel very blessed to have the family that I have, and I think they've poured a lot into me in general, but also into my aspirations of what I want to do. And I think also having a foundation, whether it's actual family or family that you create, of people who pour into you and believe in you, and sort of give you those tools. Because I got my first sewing machine when I was 10 because I expressed an interest, and they were like, go for it.
And they fully funded it, yes,
right.
for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that families, sometimes it's hard to continue to achieving your endeavors if your family does not support you. But I don't necessarily think that should stop you or neglect you from, because honestly, at the end of the day, you're living for yourself, right? And it would be obviously you want to make your parents proud and your family proud, but if you're not satisfied, then you have to do something about it.
Right.
So for someone who does not have a supportive family, what would you tell them?
Well, kind of like how I mentioned, like family that you create, like do that as well. And I think being intentional about your community is also very important as far as whatever success looks like for you. But I think community is very essential. Working with other people
who are in the same avenue as you.
Not even just the same avenue, but just people who support you, because you might even there find an intersection with someone else who might be doing something different. But just like building a community of people that can support, that you can work with, that you can actually like nurture.
Lean on.
Right, exactly. I think that's really fundamental too.
How do you know that how do you know if you're doing the right thing? How do you know if this is not just a dream that you're chasing temporarily, but this is what you want to do? Do you think that it's also a feeling?
It can be. I think for me, it kind of has showed up in different ways. And I think maybe for different people, it will show up in different ways. But I think I put out, I guess you could say, like a book last summer. But it was kind of like a collection.
What's it called?
It's called Might Be Mal. Yeah, but
Oh, that's cute.
thank you. Yes, I put it out last summer, and it's like sort of a linear catalog of my creative journey up to this point, from when like I got that sewing machine to where I am now. And I sent it out to a few different friends who like I trusted with giving like feedback before I actually released it. And getting the response of like that one page where you talked about this related so much to me, or like I understood exactly what you meant. That was when I knew like, okay, maybe
this
like
is what you're doing.
Right, like
no, for sure.
It's actually hitting like I want it to. And so I think sometimes like you shouldn't necessarily seek external validation,
for sure.
But at the same time, if it's bigger than you and you want it to relate to somebody, it's got to relate to somebody.
For sure. And I think that's even one of the reasons why I started this podcast, is really at the end of the day to inspire others who may not be sure if they want to pick up a sewing machine just yet, or have dreams of trying to learn the camera but are scared because it seems to be like a hot thing at the moment. But you just said something that brought me back. So how do you take criticism? Because everybody is not going to like what you do. And I know as a creative, our work is literally based on the people and how people perceive it. So if you put out a project and let's say people didn't like it, or you weren't feeling an overwhelming amount of love, how would you cope?
I think having that community is very important. And I think you also have to create for yourself first, because even if it doesn't, if it doesn't hit other people, if it doesn't relate to other people, at least you can stand behind it. You can, say that you put your best foot for it and you did what you were trying to do with whatever project. But I also think having that community is important as well, to sort of reaffirm you, but also like it doesn't always have to, I guess, like please the masses.
It doesn't.
Like, yeah, so I just feel like as long as it's something that you can be proud of first for your effort, then like forget what anyone else thinks. So
but at the end of the day, I do think that you'll still suffer for some type of like insecurity. So how would you internally, how would you reassure yourself, like, you have your community, but what if you also knew that you could have done better? Do you just push yourself to work better?
Well, I also think that like you can't like every single time you put something out, it's not going to be your best work. And I think you kind of have to have like trial and error to get to a place, to get to a place where you're actually able to be proud of it. So I do think also you should give yourself grace and time as well. But I think also for me, I think I've gotten to a place where I realize like there's a talent there, and it's like a God-given talent. So then who am I to sort of decide like it's not enough just because someone else says so? So maybe like that means I need to go back to the drawing board and figure out how to redo something, but it doesn't necessarily say anything about me personally and like what I actually can do. So.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that was great. So my final question for you, Mallory, would probably be to other Spelman students, or any student, any Black woman specifically trying to find their avenues of life. But Spelman doesn't necessarily give us the most opportunities. How would you help them in their careers?
When you say not giving us the most opportunities,
like how did you find the scholarship FSF?
Okay. My friend actually at Clark had won the year before, and I think that goes back to community as well, because I think he might have like reached out to me originally, and then we connected that way. But like having community as well like can also lead to opportunity.
Networking.
Yeah, and I originally saw the scholarship when he won, and I just figured it was like for fashion majors, so I didn't even like think to touch it or anything. But then when the application opened the next year, he was like, "You've got to apply." I'm like, "I'm a STEM major."
Yeah.
So
How could you
he was
apply?
like, "No, it's not major specific." So I was like, "Oh, bet," and I hopped right on it. So I also think like outside of Spelman, like you can call it networking, but at the same time, just like within that community, you never know what opportunities will come. And surrounding yourself with people who are very intentional about their goals as well definitely ensures.
I love intentionality.
Yeah, intention
That's
is like my
favorite
biggest
thing.
thing.
What?
Yeah.
No, listen.
Yeah.
I think that if you're not doing anything with any type of intention
Mhm.
or you're not being thoughtful about your work, I think it doesn't even make sense to put it out necessarily
Mhm.
because it's like, what's the point? Like, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? There's no purpose in that. And
Yeah, I was actually talking to a friend yesterday about the way that intention is so important, especially for art.
Yes.
And how like it can exist and it can look good and whatever, but if it doesn't really have an intention, then it's like kind of
pointless.
Yeah, like what's the point? But I do also think like in some sense with art, there's a part of it that's just for like monetary value, so it's like that works. But if it's for a purpose where it's like supposed to be bigger than you, it's supposed to like resonate with other people, then there has to be some sort of like value behind it for sure.
And I think that when people use the term creative, I think that they think it's just like it's just a spur of an idea or it's just like a go with the flow kind of thing. And whilst that might be true, there's definitely thought behind that, and it stems from a place. You just have to look deep enough to find it.
To be honest with you, I don't even like the term like being called a creative.
Really?
Not at all. Like, no,
Really?
I don't
Why
like
not?
it. I think like the whole creative concept is now very saturated and it's like
that's
kind of
something popular.
blurred. So like when I hear it, it kind of like hurts my ear a little bit, like because it's just like, what does it really mean?
To be a
Because I think
creative?
of creative and I think of like this is not a diss, but just like maybe somebody who's like on TikTok and does like fit videos and things. I love a good TikTok fit video, but like that's not like how I would define myself as a creative, and I think there's like a distance there that sort of needs to be specified. So I prefer visionary.
Visionary, I do like that. So do you take the perception of how society uses creative for yourself? Because for me, I think I'm a proud creative, only because I know that I'm also multifaceted, and I never want to be confined to one box. Like I have fashion, I have creative direction, I just have even like music, you know what I'm saying? So I never want to label myself and have the world perceive me as that, and then when I want to change, it's not accepted. So that's just how I view it. But visionary is definitely that's grand. That's a beautiful word.
Yeah.
So the perception of being creative, what would that mean? Oh, you just answered that. What does that mean to you to be a visionary? So do you correct people when they call you creative?
Not necessarily, because I don't think it's like ill intent or anything. But just like if I'm referring to myself, then I probably won't use the word. Yeah.
How you define yourself is key.
Yeah.
But thank you, Mallory, for coming on the show. This is a great conversation, and I loved it. Be sure to make sure you go follow Mallory at
Mallory.Adele.
And make sure to follow me at Nyla Lovelock and follow the podcast page at ll.podcast. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you. Thank you, Mallory.